All right, let's go ahead. Folks are still coming in, but let's go ahead and get started. We've got a pretty full agenda tonight. We don't want to miss a single minute. Thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Kirk Albinson with the Community Builders. We're excited to have you here tonight to join us for a neighborhood presentation on 4715 Northwestern Avenue, the development concept. Before we get started, we have Laura Reimers with Alderman Martin's office in the 47th Ward here with us. We've asked Laura to just make a couple comments before we get started. Laura, I'll pass it to you.
Hey everyone, this is Laura with the 47th Ward office. So just want to thank you all for joining us tonight. I just want to take a brief moment at the beginning of the meeting to sort of talk you through our community-driven zoning process, especially if you weren't able to make the first 3 visioning meetings about this property that we hosted, and also just to make clear that this meeting is actually hosted and organized by the Community Builders, the developer, as well as it's an addition to what would be our community-driven process. So it's somewhat unique in the sense that currently they're applying for funding, and I think they'll get more in depth about this throughout the meeting. The point at which our office would be in a position to make a decision here would be if a proposal would receive funding, then we'd receive an application. And you can read more on our website at aldermanmartin.com/development. I'll go ahead and throw that link in the chat. So we keep all of our applications on that website. Each developer fills out the same type of application. And we actually went ahead in 2019 and provided some preliminary materials that we received about this potential project. So you can go ahead and make comments about that proposal there as well. So I know folks have already done that in some cases, but I wanted to make sure you were aware of that opportunity. And then finally, I just want to say quickly that one of the things that we really appreciate working in our community is how engaged and informed and involved people are, especially in our various decision-making processes. So we definitely expect nothing less tonight. So we know people might have strong opinions about this property, and we know that our community is strong at understanding and listening to folks who have different perspectives, and we know that's going to happen again tonight. So folks from our team are looking forward to listening and learning tonight, just like y'all, and looking forward to it. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Laura. Once again, thank you everyone for attending tonight. We've got a full agenda, so we're going to jump right into it. Will, if you can move to the next slide. Just a highlight on the content we're going to cover tonight. Will, if you don't mind going on to the next slide. Oh, while Will's, there we go, thank you. So we're going to first cover an introduction in terms of going over the site. I know everybody in the neighborhood knows the site. Go through design concepts, and then we'll talk about the process. And then after our conclusion, we're going to open it up for public comments. And if you can go to the next slide, there's really 2 important things for everyone to know tonight. There's 2 ways to interact with us. Because we have so many folks signed up right now, we've got over 170 folks that are live with us right now. First is submitting questions at the bottom of your screen. Hopefully, after being in the pandemic now for over a year, everyone's familiar with the Q&A function. Submit your questions throughout any time during this presentation. We are collecting that information. We will do the best we can to answer as many questions at certain intervals through the presentation as we can. The second opportunity to communicate is during the community feedback portion. After the end of the presentation, we will pause, answer some questions, and then we'll move into community feedback where folks can raise their hand. We'll turn on that functionality when we get to that point. And we'll give individuals 2 minutes apiece to be able to make public comment. And we do appreciate everyone doing everything they can to stay to that time limit, because we know that we probably won't have enough time to go through all the public comments tonight, but we're going to do the best we can with the time that we have. So I don't want to waste any more time with that. I'll start with introductions with our team. First off, my name is Kirk Albinson. I am a senior project manager with the Community Builders, been with the organization for 6 years. I'm been fortunate to be with TCB and have the opportunity to work on this project and be involved with the community to go through this process. And I'll pass it to you, Ash, to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ash Ray. I'm a development associate with TCB. I've been with the company for about a year now and excited to be involved in this potential project.
Great. Thanks, Ash. Gabriel?
Hi, my name's Gabriel Ignacio Gikiewicz, and I'm president of DesignBridge, and we're the architects, and we've been working with community builders for the last several years, and really looking forward to presenting this project tonight.
Great. And then last, I'll pass it to Will, who's going to be our main speaker for the evening. So Will, I'm going to pass it to you and go ahead and introduce yourself, but I'll let you just take it away.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kirk. My name's Will Woodley. I'm the Regional Vice President of Development for the Community Builders. I essentially work with my team to lead development for the Community Builders in and around Chicago. I've been with the Community Builders, which we often refer to as TCB, for over 15 years, working in and around Chicago in different neighborhoods and suburbs with lots of different partnerships. So again, as Kirk stated early on, we really appreciate everyone for tuning in tonight, for participating in this presentation. We'll kind of admit up front that it's a bit long. There is a lot of information to cover. So again, thanks for the commitment of participating tonight. And, you know, as Kirk also alluded to, we're all having to adapt during COVID. In some ways, these virtual meetings allow us to have a really large participation, which is good, but in other ways, you know, meeting in person is better for other reasons. And so, you know, I'll just add that this is, everybody's been working in Zoom now quite a bit over the last year, but this is actually the first time we're hosting a presentation like this that sort of introduces a development concept to the larger community. So frankly, we're still, you know, learning how to do this a bit, but we definitely hope that tonight would provide a kind of strong overview of our development concept and the facts. So there's a lot of information to share this evening. We've already said that a few times. At times, we're going to have to move swiftly through some of that information, but we are recording the presentation so folks can revisit any topics later, hopefully. And before we get into important background information and project details, because frankly, there is quite a bit of misinformation out there right now about this development concept, it is important to address some topics up front. First, it's important to clarify that our development concept for this city-owned parking lot at 4715 Northwestern has always had two main goals. The first goal is to improve the gateway from Western Avenue to Lincoln Avenue while still providing public parking. The strip of Leland between Western and Lincoln Avenue and next to the train station, that strip of Leland, frankly, could be a lot better. It's an important gateway to the Lincoln Avenue Small Business District. And we want our development to help make that gateway better. Our concepts provide outdoor seating along Leland, wider, safer sidewalks as well, and the addition of trees and a streetscape that matches Lincoln Avenue. And our development, we believe, can complement improvements to the CTA Plaza across the street, which is an important goal in the 2019 Lincoln Square Master Plan. These improvements to the gateway can be made while still preserving public parking. There are currently 43 public parking spots in that parking lot. There's actually 47 spaces in all, but only 43 of those spaces are for public parking. Our proposal, which we'll get into in detail in just a bit, provides 40 public parking spots to be preserved in the long run. The second goal is to, of our development concept, the second goal is to provide apartments that help make Lincoln Square more affordable to a range of incomes. Lincoln Square is becoming more and more expensive. We'll get into the details exactly, but basically we build and own apartments with rent restrictions so that they're affordable to a mix of incomes earning up to $52,000 for one person and $75,000 for a family of four. You know, if you think about the workers in the restaurants, shops, cultural institutions that serve Lincoln Square every day and help to make it a great community to live in, many of those workers earn in that income range. And we really believe that we should help those workers live in the neighborhood that they help to make great. It's also a fact that we believe it's a fact that Chicago is too segregated by income, race, and ethnicity. And we do know that, and we have a lot of experience, that if we work together, we can build stronger Chicago neighborhoods, but also help to make sure that those neighborhoods are affordable to a range of incomes. The development concept does not eliminate all of the public parking. It actually preserves public parking. And we'll get into details on that. It does not redevelop the parking lot used for the farmers market, Applefest, or Square routes. The Mayfest and German American Fest do use this parking lot, but it's not for their primary tents. It's for their secondary tents. I know the hope and belief is that if this development did proceed, that those festivals, the folks who run those festivals, could reconfigure a bit if this parking lot is redeveloped. I've heard that Applefest, for example, has actually reconfigured its layout a number of times over the last 10 years. And we would hope that the folks who run the Mayfest and the German American Fest, would be able to work with them so that they could reconfigure a little bit, still keep their main tents where they already are, but that there would be an opportunity for them to basically stay in the same place. The development concept does not threaten Lincoln Square, as we've seen in some flyers. The goal of the development is to truly strengthen the community for everyone. So those are the two goals. We'll probably come back to them a couple times, but do want to talk just a little bit about the community builders. I'm going to move through this relatively quickly. We are a mission-driven, nonprofit real estate development company. We've worked in Chicago neighborhoods and suburbs for over 20 years. We are considered a national leader in mixed income community development. And our mission is to build and sustain strong communities where all people can thrive. We really focus on providing developments that strengthen communities while ensuring affordability in those communities. We're currently completing transit-oriented mixed-use developments in Oak Park, and as well as in the South Loop and in Bronzeville. And we, in addition to developing apartments, we've also had the privilege to develop some pretty great community amenities in and around Chicago. We just delivered a School of Performing Arts in downtown Aurora. In the last 10 years, we built a Park District field house in Bronzeville. And we're also developing and helping to deliver smaller scaled community-focused restaurants and retails currently. Just a couple examples of properties we've done, developments we've delivered in very recently. This is actually our most recent development. It's the Aurora Arts Center, a large mixed-use adaptive reuse in downtown Aurora. We delivered a restaurant, 38 affordable apartments for artists, as well as a School of Performing Arts, as already mentioned. This is actually some views of the apartments and the amenity spaces that we delivered, including a gallery and some collaboration space. These are photos of the School of Performing Arts that is led by Paramount Theater. If anybody has a chance to get out there and check out either the school or Paramount Theater, we would strongly suggest it. It's exceptional. And then we also helped to open a restaurant in the space, Stope Island Social, which is led by Amy Morton, who has some excellent restaurants not too far away from Lincoln Square. I'd say within 20 minutes in Evanston is where she has a few restaurants as well. We're currently also delivering transit-oriented development in Oak Park that we're very proud of. This is the 801 in Oak Park. It's going to be, construction is almost completed. We're going to start leasing apartments literally in a matter of weeks. This is 1 block away from the Blue Line in Oak Park. And we're also developing, leading a pretty large redevelopment effort in the South Loop, right where the South Loop, Bronzeville, and Chinatown meet. It's an overall master development effort called Southbridge. The first phase, or known as 23rd Place Apartments, are under construction. We'll start leasing apartments and retail space this fall. It's 206 apartments, 15,000 square feet of commercial space, as well as 3,500 square feet of community space. And we are building new streets for the city. We're literally at this site rebuilding, reopening Dearborn Street, 23rd Street, and we've actually created a new street called 23rd Place. We're very excited to open this and deliver this for Chicago this fall. So I'm now, that was obviously kind of a quick introduction to the community builders. As we move forward, if we're lucky enough to move forward with this effort, we certainly would be more than happy to continue to engage with stakeholders who want to get to know us better. That would be an opportunity that certainly we'll welcome. But jumping into the site and neighborhood context, the location we are talking about is the city-owned parking lot right at the intersection of Leland and Western. It's the northeast corner. It currently has 47 parking stalls. 43 of those are used for public parking. The other 3 are for enterprise parking, and 1 is a Zipcar. You can sort of see from this view, this is a gateway location into Lincoln Square. It's right at the intersection. The other side across from the parking lot is the CTA Plaza, which I know there's efforts either underway or starting soon to improve that plaza, which we think is great. Here's another view of the site. You can see Leland and Western kind of coming together, and then Leland connecting into Lincoln Avenue. The space that's colored in green and labeled number 1, that is actually the parking lot for the farmers market. That's not the parking lot we're referring to. You can also see Giddings Plaza is labeled number 2. Here's just for folks who are still, understandably trying to orient themselves to the space a little bit as we're talking through it. This is just a shot from Western looking at the parking lot, sort of looking northeast. As we started to consider the opportunity for redeveloping the parking lot and how we think it could actually be better for everyone, or the community, the greater community, we definitely looked to, the Lincoln Square master plan that was completed by the Lincoln Square SSA number 21 in 2019. We thought it was actually a really excellent effort by a community, and we certainly have paid attention to a lot of its key recommendations, including improving the area around the train station, encouraging a mix of housing types, including density and some affordable housing close to transit. It's extremely important to try to preserve and enhance community character. And also, just trying to really improve, make this site more pedestrian, make it more pedestrian friendly around, along Western, but also around this intersection. We also paid attention to the guidelines specifically for Western. We won't go through all of these, but we've certainly paid attention to all of these when we were considering a development concept, including, a lot of residents have called for, trying to address the barrier feel of Western that in a way kind of unfortunately divides Lincoln Square residents, sort of the folks who live on the west side and the east side of Western. But we did also just really pay attention to the guidelines around ground floor commercial, outdoor seating, plantings, but not too high so as not to get in the way of visibility. And then also really just having an active outdoor spaces that complement adjacent buildings. We also have paid attention to the recent visioning meetings about the parking lot. We'll get into in a little bit, our own timeline of, looking at the parking lot since 2019, but the recent visioning sessions, we commend those and have paid attention to the survey results. We won't go through all of them, but it is clear, and we fully agree that sort of supporting the local business district is extremely important and one of the sort of top priorities for residents in the community. And that makes complete sense. At the same time, in terms of top opportunities to improve, in addition to supporting local businesses, another top priority was to try to make Lincoln Square a more affordable place to live. And actually right around this intersection, safer to walk and bike. We paid attention to preferences for different businesses that might go on the ground floor, and also things that might make people even more likely to shop in Lincoln Square, including outdoor dining, a variety of businesses, improved green space. And we also paid attention to the buildings that people sort of connect with the most, including Dock House, historic buildings along Lincoln Avenue, and also the newer buildings such as the new expansion of the Old Town School of Music. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but we definitely also paid attention to all the different pros and cons that people reported in the surveys. For our own kind of observations are that the parking lot is important. It gets use on evenings and weekends. It isn't typically at capacity, except maybe around certain festivals and things like that, but it certainly gets use. And that is why we've always proposed that there needs to be some public parking preserved for sure. We do feel that the sidewalk along Leland, it is narrow. It doesn't frankly feel safe at times. And it's just not pedestrian friendly. And that, Western does really exacerbate a divide between the neighborhoods, and it would be great if development tried to address that better. In terms of design goals, we do want to try to provide a true and better gateway for Lincoln Square, add green space, continue to provide public parking for local businesses, housing for a range of incomes, a development and sort of a gateway that continues to promote community events and festivals, a development that fits in with the community, doesn't sort of try to duplicate historic buildings that frankly can't, they don't build them that way anymore, but certainly pays attention to and complements both in the massing and the material types, and just sort of the thoughtfulness in the design on how we try to complement historic buildings and the overall community character and heritage. And we do want to, provide additional commercial options on the ground floor for the community. We're going to jump into our design concept now, and I'm privileged to hand it over to Gabi, who leads Design Bridge. As he's mentioned, we've worked with them as an architect for a number of years. They're our architect for our work in Oak Park that we're very proud of. And we couldn't think of a better architect to work with us on this effort.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Will. Good evening, everyone. My name is Gabi. I'm the president of Design Bridge, and I'm really excited to talk a little more in detail about this concept for 4715 Western. First, just to kind of highlight some of the larger goals of the project, which Will has mentioned a lot of them, is that we really see this project as an opportunity to create a gateway building for the neighborhood, and one that maximizes community benefit. And so as we paid careful attention to how the building's sited and looking at ways that we can push the building back to make sidewalks wider, especially along Leland, and get more landscape so we can really encourage pedestrian activity along Leland and connecting across Western to future. We know that the future greenway is being planned and those type of things, and creating this better connection to Lincoln Avenue. This building really right now is conceived as a 5-story building. It's a building with ground floor retail, park, and 3 floors of residential. So it's really important that we had that we maximize activity, the activation of the corner by creating restaurant retail opportunity. We also, we'll get into it, are looking at creating outdoor space and a plaza. We understand the importance of parking, so that is a big part of our this current proposal that we're presenting tonight. And very important to our proposal is that we're providing well-designed apartments for a mix of incomes. And we understand the history of the neighborhood. We understand the cultural institutions of the neighborhood and some of the great architecture that is admired in the neighborhood. And while we're not looking to replicate it, we're looking to build something that's contextual and nods to it in a modern way. Next slide. This is what everybody knows, the intersection that we're talking about, and just kind of giving some immediate context to what we're going to show. The Donk House in the background and some mixed-use residential right across the street. Go to the next slide. And just a collection of sort of the landmark buildings of the neighborhood, both new and old, and really what makes up the character of the community. Next. And more of that, even with with Donk House and just again a mix of the building stock between the new buildings and the old buildings. And we also understand the importance of neighborhood festivals and highlighting the German American culture and the important and how our development can strengthen those connections. This is just looking at, we see this building as really looking at incorporation of high quality materials that are rich in texture. And so definitely looking at masonry and new ways of articulating masonry that start to nod to the old buildings, and that's what this represents. And this is an overall site plan. So the blue line, as you see, really shows that the pedestrian connection that we're trying to make. Again, we're talking about a 5-story building. We look, the overall, the form has a carve out at the corner, which creates an open space that starts to communicate with the future improved CTA Plaza across the street, and just create more more open space for the neighborhood, which we know is very important. And again, setting the building back. We also, as we get into some of the visuals, you'll see that it's very important that we address multiple scales. From a Western Avenue scale, where the street is very wide, we can support a larger building. So we locate our 5-story portion of the building toward Western, and really stepping down toward Lincoln Avenue corridor. So we have a 2-story portion of our building and a 4-story portion of our building as we kind of terrace down and turn the corner on Leland. Along Leland, just some of the points we've already made. We're widening the sidewalk. We're moving a curb cut along Leland, which will again encourage better pedestrian use. And I think that we can go to the next slide now. And this is looking at kind of a diagram of the building massing in a diagrammatic form, and you can see along Leland, the purple building, the building that's across the alley. We have a part of our building which really tries to match that scale and make that connection across the alley and transition down toward Lincoln Avenue. And then we have a 4-story portion that really references other heights, other 4-story buildings in the community, and then our 5-story portion pushed away from Leland, making room for a plaza. Setting slide. And this is just another more detailed view of the plaza, showing that we're making room, setting our building back almost 15 feet from the curb, creating a really nice parkway that can have different pavers and things that are seen in other parts of the neighborhood, as well as landscaping within the plaza. And I think we can go to the next slide.
Yeah, I'd just add here, if we'll have other visuals to help with this, but for folks who are familiar with the improvements right at Leland and Lincoln Avenue, in the last number of years, they've made improvements to the sidewalks and the street trees there, and it makes a big difference. And then you keep walking towards Western, and that goes away, and you end up with this really pretty narrow sidewalks. And because there's no parking along Leland there, it feels, there's pretty fast moving traffic at times. And so again, just kind of highlight that we're trying to extend that feel of Lincoln Avenue all the way along Leland to Western.
And this is starting to look at the plan. So this is the ground floor, and I'll just talk kind of how it's organized. You can see in the pink that we are looking to really maximize the commercial use at the corner, and then and flanking kind of the plaza that we're creating. If we go to the north end, that is where the entrance to the parking level, which sits above the first floor, which utilizes the existing curb cut for the existing parking lot. And to the north of that is a convenience access stair to the parking and from the parking. Below that, to the south, is the residential entrance, and then all the commercial activity. And then as we turn the corner to Leland, we have a lobby for another lobby for the parking with an elevator for accessibility. And then there's another stair that flanks that. At the back of the building in the rear, we have 9 residential parking spaces. And we paid a lot of attention to trying to actually improve the alley. So our parking is it's a 16-foot wide alley, but our parking is set back an additional 4 feet. So we have 20 feet to really make that a better vehicular experience, as well as widening the mouth of the alley from 16 feet to 18 feet. This is the half level of parking once you come up the ramp. We thought it was really important to make this a comfortable, usable parking structure. So our spaces are all 8'6" wide and some 9 feet where we're at columns. And so what you're seeing here is what we're calling like the mezzanine level. And at the end, the bottom or south is Leland, and that's where we have the elevator lobby for the parking. And I think In total, our parking structure, we're getting 40 spaces within the parking structure. There may be, due to accessibility, we may need to provide an additional parking space, which we would provide at the alley, off of the alley. But we still need to work through a lot of details. This is very early conceptual, and so we're between 40 and 41 spaces where we may end up. And this is the final level, or this is kind of a level and a half, and this is the upper level parking.
Yeah, and then, I'll just add, we spent a lot of time working on this sort of mix of uses, the plaza, commercial space, which we expect would most likely be restaurants. First of all, we totally agree and support the idea of emphasizing local businesses, and we would be committed to identifying, Chicago-based businesses to go into these spaces. It could be one large restaurant, or it could be two, for example. But the other thing, I just want to emphasize that we, over a year ago, we sat down with lots of different businesses, or I'll say a number of different businesses in and around the site, or along Lincoln Avenue and around Lincoln Square. And we paid attention to concerns. And so, the sort of tweaks we did around the setback in the alleys to make it easier for vehicles to move back there, that came from those conversations. The space of the size and sort of layout of parking spots, so that this is a parking garage that doesn't have really narrow parking stalls as you see in some garages, where it's kind of ridiculous and you can't even get out of the car. We paid attention to that. We have 8.5 foot wide stalls, but then your columns, we went to 9 feet. And we tried to also really be mindful of how people enter from a pedestrian perspective into the parking, so that we've got entrances and exits both on Leland as well as on Western, so that whether you're going to a farmer's market, or going to Lincoln Avenue, or going to an event at Donk House, that you have convenient, well-lit entrances and exits, sort of going in either directions.
Thanks, Will. And this gets into the upper levels, the three levels of residential. This particular plan is from floors 3 and 4, and you can see on the very bottom is, we say roof below. That is sort of the first setback of the building, and on the left, we're starting to give you a little teaser of what the building could look like in representing that first setback. You can see in the plan, there's some green that's representing some planters that would be visible from below, improving the experience, for looking at the building. And I think that's good for that one. And then this is the top floor of the 5-story portion, and we have utilizing the 4-story portion as a roof terrace. So we have a lounge for residents and a roof terrace at the 4th floor, and on the left, you're seeing kind of an image of those setbacks and how they start to translate from the street. And this is a view looking at this concept along Leland, looking east. You can see sort of the farmer's market in the background, and sort of how we're with the new streetscape trees, trying to really create a nice pedestrian and welcoming pedestrian experience that connects to Lincoln Avenue. On the left, you can see the access to the parking. On the left of the image, you see the access to the parking, then the residential entrance, and then commercial activity that wraps the entire corner and into the plaza. Another view with some additional context, you can see the 5-story portion of the building is set back from Leland, which really helps. And with the Donk House in the background and the other mixed-use building across the street starts to relate to those scales and starts to step down toward Leland and Lincoln. Another kind of more straight on view, which shows a little bit more of how the parking, the different uses on the ground floor, as well as the different terracing that we're doing to relate to the scales. So on the right, you have kind of that very well lit, welcoming public parking entrance. There's also a stair, and as you move left, you can see the retail really creating good retail presence was really important as we developed this scheme. And just another contextual view emphasizing how we felt it was important to really show multiple scales in the massing, and this shows a direct connection with the building across the alley along Leland to this proposed building.
Yeah, and I'll talk up Gabby's work just a little bit more here too. We know that masonry is the material of the community, and we've been paying attention to it in a lot of different ways. And so you can kind of see here different textures and types of brick masonry that kind of come together. You can also see Gabi was picking up on sort of the horizontal lines in a lot of the buildings that you can kind of see that right in the building, the 2-story building across the alley where Augusta Wine Shop and Neighborly are. And we don't do it exactly the same way that it was done 100 years ago, but if you can kind of even continue to see the visual connections of those horizontal lines. And even something that you'll also notice a lot in Lincoln Square is not on every building, but on some buildings, including, for example, the Donk House, but other buildings over by Giddings Plaza. There's sort of a lighter, the first story is kind of lighter. Sometimes it's stone, sometimes it's some other kind of lighter masonry. And we're picking up on that as well in this design. So, definitely want input, and we'll continue to refine, but I really do appreciate the work that Design Bridge has done so far. And this actually points out to it probably even better, but Gabi was probably going to talk about it now. Sorry.
No, that was great. No, definitely, wanted to acknowledge a lot of the classical influences in the neighborhood, but in kind of a newer way. So looking at different ways of using masonry and using brick. So we have kind of like a vertical orientation, and then different bandings that we're creating to acknowledge those classical base that you see in a lot of the buildings in Lincoln Square. This and also color was really important. We wanted to create a lighter building, not being stark and too stark and too modern, but something that fits in with some of these other more yellow and orange buildings in the community. So, and then this just shows kind of the widening of the alley a little bit, and also connections again to the building across the alley. And
yeah, and I mean, just on the alley again, there's obviously a lot of important businesses right there. And talking to them, there's loading and on all those types of things. And so we're not doing anything that makes the pedestrian experience, that hurts the pedestrian experience on Leland, but we did try to be mindful of wanting to be a good neighbor to businesses across the alley.
Just another contextual view showing the different heights.
This would be sort of if you're standing in the parking lot where the farmers markets are. So, if you were standing there this morning, I know there's farmers markets on Tuesdays and Thursdays. This would be sort of a potential view. And there is a farmer's market. Anything else on this one?
I don't think so.
Hey, this is Kirk. Will and Gabi, getting a lot of great questions. Just want to jump in on that slide. Someone raised the question about how's the redevelopment of this section of Leland going to affect the Leland Bike Greenway that is being developed? Will there be?
That's a good question. Yeah. So for folks who don't know, the city has a number of different improvements to certain streets to make them more bike friendly, including Leland recently. And so, I mean, we think it's great that the city is doing that here and necessary and the right thing. I mean, one of the things that does seem to make sense is to try a term that gets used in urban planning is multimodal for small business districts like Lincoln Square to be successful. You want as many people to be able to come to those businesses without and trying to minimize how they annoy each other getting there. And so it requires good urban design around cars, bikes, pedestrians, transit, bus, walking, I think I just said that, et cetera. And so, you know, we think that making it easier to bike around the community makes a ton of sense. And we've obviously tried to show some thoughtfulness around just making this more pedestrian friendly, but would be more than open to how else we could make it more bike friendly. Gabi, did you want to, any more questions right now, Kirk, or are we going to wait till we get through the?
I'll bring up some more as we go through, but
Okay, cool.
right now I'll hold off. Thank you.
Great. So Gabi, I don't know if you wanted to speak to this couple more slides. You're on mute.
Thanks. Sorry about that. So no, just a quick point. I mean, we focused a lot on Leland. This is a view along Western, just showing the parking and views from this way, as well as a potential mural location.
Mm-hmm. You know, one thing that has come up a lot is public art. We're not trying to propose what that art should look like, so please don't take that as such, but certainly open to and embrace the idea of public art being part of good development. We're doing that right now in Oak Park, and we would expect and welcome the opportunity to include public art here.
Just another vantage point, looking at more straight on in elevation, and you can see that with the point of public art, you know, looking at an opportunity for landmark sculpture for the building that you can see on the right. Again, we're not saying that that's what it is, but it's just a placeholder for what could, you know, there could be something there.
Yeah, it seems like a really good opportunity to do something.
That really concludes everything. This is just a close-up view of the plaza.
Great. All right. Well, why don't I jump into asking a handful of questions from the audience. I would say about half of the questions that we've gotten are related to parking. A little bit of technical, a little bit of design, but do you mind just breaking down the parking between what parking is public, show us where that is, how many stalls, what parking is for the residential piece on floors 3, 4, and 5. And if you can give us a breakdown of numbers, and then there's a number of follow-up questions. For the folks in the audience, we've probably got over a dozen questions about parking, and they all follow similar themes. So I'm going to try to synthesize this in a handful of questions. So I'll pass it to Will and Gabriel to try and answer it.
Yeah, so we definitely spent a lot. This is the most, and rightfully so. It's the most we've ever time we've ever spent on for a development concept around parking. But it makes sense for this site and development to focus on that. So we actually, Gabi, you know, worked with a parking design expert who's done a number of parking designs in and around Chicago, including, you know, some of the more complicated high rises in downtown Chicago. And so there are, you know, parking comes off of Western, and there are 40 spaces in this concept that are basically in a parking deck on the second floor, sort of the best way to describe it. There are 40 spaces. They're 8.5 feet wide. They're 9 and they're 9 feet by columns, because when you park next to a column, you want a little bit of extra space. There are entries and exits with on both Leland, sort of and Western, with an elevator on Leland, and stairs. You know, it's just 1 story up, so stairs on Western and Leland. And then for and this is all public parking, and we currently imagine, or not imagine, we are expecting that it would function very similar to what's currently there. That, you know, with similar kind of parking expense in terms of what the rates would be for parking. We're assuming that it's essentially the same. Anything else, Kirk, on this that I'm missing?
I think you're hitting it. You know, there's been even some design questions about, like, could we put the parking on the ground? Not sure if you just want to respond to that one as well.
Yeah, I mean, so we definitely think that you can do successful mixed use buildings, particularly gateway buildings that combine really strong pedestrian oriented ground floors with outdoor seating, restaurants, green space, and then parking on the second level. And that's what we're proposing here, because we think that that would lead to the best gateway development, and also address a lot of issues that came out of things like came out of surveys, and also the 2019 master plan. People want this to be more pedestrian friendly, to feel safer. There is a pretty significant divide between, you know, for folks who are walking to the square and live on the other side of Western, and that this would really enhance and kind of improve the gateway by having commercial uses on the ground floor and better streetscaping, but then parking on the second floor. We do have some residential parking off the alley. It's 9 spaces. As Gabi alluded to, when we were working through sort of parking requirements, we think one of our ADA public parking spots would actually need to be right. It's sort of the first spot that you can see here off the alley, so that we would ultimately end up with 41 public parking spaces, which is great. You know, we ultimately have to work with the city and if that's required and how that would work exactly. But aside from that one extra public parking space off the alley, we have 9 spots. We should have about 9 or 10 spots for residential parking. So from that perspective, it is very transit oriented. We, you know, obviously right across from this site is the train station. We imagine that a lot of the people who live in this building will probably work in the community, and so can walk to work, which would be great, or take a train to work, bike, take a bus. You're on Western. And so we don't have a lot of residential parking spaces, which is sort of the point of transit-oriented development for the apartments. We don't have a lot of parking spaces for the apartments, but because this is such an important kind of regional neighborhood commercial district. And when I say regional, we know that a lot of people come from the greater region to the neighborhood, that we do think continuing to preserve public parking to help support the small businesses made sense. So that's sort of how we combined ground floor uses and second floor uses to have parking on the second floor, but commercial uses mostly on the first floor. And by commercial uses, I mean, basically, it's most likely restaurant space with outdoor seating.
Great. Hey, just looking at the clock, and we want to move ahead.
Yeah.
One or two more questions on the design.
Sorry if that was too long.
Goes back just, Will, to, you were just commenting about this. An attendee states, the lack of connectivity across Western has been mentioned, as well as creating a gateway. Has there been any discussion on coordinating elements between this corner and the other three corners to create a more unified, connected feel across the intersection?
There has not. That would be great. And if we're so lucky to move forward with this and that there was an opportunity to help participate in that, we would love it. I should mention, Kirk is not only doing a great job here as the moderator, some of the projects that we've been showing as examples of sort of what we're capable of, Kirk has led as the project manager. And the reason I'm bringing this up is the development in Oak Park. We did just that. We created a better pedestrian experience with the streetscape and sidewalks on sort of our side of the street. And then the city, the Village of Oak Park, coordinated street improvements that matched it on the other side of the street, basically to make it easier and safer to cross. So this intersection should be improved for the community. It's a really important intersection if you sort of go visit it. It sort of jumps out at you like this is another gateway. One of the gateways to Lincoln Square is where Lincoln Avenue hits Lawrence. This is another one, right? Obviously Lincoln Avenue, where it connects with Wells Park and Montrose, is another gateway, but this connection along Leland is really how Lincoln Avenue connects to Western. And yeah, this intersection should be better.
All right, one last question, and then we'll move on. Is the roof terrace open to the public?
No. We have good green space on the ground floor with the plaza and stuff, but the roof terrace is for the residents of the building. We do think in apartments having outdoor space or just space for the residents both to come together, but also to have some outdoor space of their own is important. And we like, that it overlooks Leland. We know Leland is activated with lots of great festivals, and we think it's kind of a nice feature for Leland, but also for the folks who will live here. All right. Any other questions for now? No. So we're going to jump into the second part, is really to focus on the apartments. Gabi covered the design and the sort of mix of uses really well, but I'm going to focus specifically on the apartments right now. The Community Builders as a mission-driven nonprofit has actually been doing this work for over 50 years. I've been doing it with them for over 15 years in and around Chicago, and we know there are lots of good questions around different types of sort of quote-unquote affordable housing. And so we really encourage people to ask those questions, because there's so many misconceptions and stigmatizations that once people really sort of understand what we're proposing and delivering, it's helpful, because with just the history of different types of housing in Chicago, there's understandable why people would really have a lot of questions. And so we're going to try to get into some details now, but if we move forward with this, we definitely would welcome more opportunities to engage people on this. So to talk about the apartments, it is important to first think about demographics a little bit, and also incomes. It's really important because we didn't sort of come up with this proposal for apartments in a vacuum. From the Lincoln Square Master Plan in 2019, pretty important statistics is that since 2000, Lincoln Square has lost a decent amount of population. That's actually approximately 11%. So population, it looks like it's starting to stabilize a bit, but Lincoln Square has been losing population. It also used to be more diverse. In 2000, it was almost 50% residents of Lincoln Square, almost 50% of them were minorities. And now it's a lot closer to a third. When we talk about being cognizant of the culture and history of Lincoln Square, it is important too to remember that unfortunately Lincoln Square is becoming less diverse right now. So that's something to consider when we're thinking about being true to the history and culture of Lincoln Square. You can also see that in just the statistic that, fewer people are speaking another language at home. But also the other thing, in addition to become less diverse, Lincoln Square household incomes are going up. That's probably a function of the fact that Lincoln Square is getting more expensive. So people who don't make as much can't live here anymore. So income's going up quite a bit. And it's just becoming less diverse and harder to live in if you don't have higher incomes and post degrees, graduate degrees, etc. So the group that we're really trying to help with our apartments are incomes that are referred to as 80% of area median income and less. So average income, sort of multiply that by 80%, and that's the group that we're seeing really getting kind of pushed out of Lincoln Square. And it's important to think about who those folks are and how they work in Lincoln Square. So these are just average incomes for current average incomes for these different positions. There's clearly a lot of shops and restaurants and cultural institutions in Lincoln Square. And you'll notice that there's also a lot of folks helping out with child daycare at home. And if you look at these incomes, you'll see that they're basically sort of starting in the teens and working their way up into the mid 50s in terms of incomes. And this really is the group that we are focused on trying to help provide quality apartments that are affordable in the long run. So we think it's very relevant to all the businesses and shops on Lawrence, Lincoln, and Western. And these folks are, if they haven't already been, priced out of living in Lincoln Square over the last decade or more. So what we're proposing is 51 apartments, and they're broken into 3 income tiers. The first tier is 16 apartments, and they're for households earning between $52,000 and $75,000. The rents, these households, sometimes when people, they hear about this, quote unquote affordable housing, they think people don't pay rents, and that's not true. At this tier, the rents are $1,200 to $1,450. This is the highest income tier, but one of the things that we also are committed to doing, it's actually required, is that we can't jack up the rents over 1 year. So the most of rents would ever go up is approximately 2% to 3% a year. But this is the first, again, just in terms of the income tiers, the first tier is 16 apartments for households earning $52,000 to $75,000, and rents are approximately $1,200 to $1,450. The second tier is 19 apartments. Those are for households earning about $39,000 to $56,000, and the approximate rents are $850 to $1,050. And the third tier is 13 apartments for households earning about up to $20,000 and earning $20,000 approximately to about $28,000. And those rents are, obviously lower for those incomes because we want to make it affordable for those incomes, where we're only spending about, a third of their income, and those are $350 to $450. We have a mix of studios, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. We didn't put a lot of 2 bedrooms at this location. We certainly know that it's important to have some larger units in Lincoln Squares. We totally support that. We do feel like at this intersection, as active as it is and would be even more active with this development, that is probably not the best location for larger families, but we certainly think that that's important in the community. So we do have a mix of studios, 1s and 2s. And again, those are just those tiers, those income tiers reference the different sort of average incomes that are found in Chicago. 80% of average income, 60% and 30%. The apartment amenities, these aren't luxury apartments, but they're nice apartments. They're good quality apartments, and we're proud of what we build and design. And we designed them in a way that a lot of the features are sort of not trendy features, but they're features that provide a good place to live in the long run. In-unit washer dryers, dishwashers, microwaves. This building, we have tall ceilings at 10 feet with larger windows, so a lot of good natural light. Good plank flooring is often referred to as luxury vinyl plank flooring, which you see in any kind of market rate apartments being built right now, as well as energy efficient appliances and design. In the building itself, we have bike parking. As we've talked about it, we have a fifth floor lounge. And then we have roof terrace, we'll show that in a second, as well as, we have a lot of different kind of security features for controlled access, and we would have on-site property management for building amenities. The 5th floor, as we were going through the design of the building, it was a fun challenge, but there was definitely a challenge with this site with the shape of the parking lot and trying to balance all the different uses. And it actually led us to an apartment type that we have a lot of experience with that works really well with the artist apartments that we've developed. Kirk has a lot of experience with that in particular. And when the apartments sort of started to lay out really well for artists with the taller ceilings, with there's sort of a big open space near windows, larger units in some cases, we realized that they really could work well as apartments for artists, and also with the location and the nearby cultural institutions such as Old Town. There's Dock House has a gallery right across the street. There's the Arts Plaza that just was created a block north at Ainsley and Western. We feel really good about the idea of proposing at the top floor. So where there's 15 apartments on the top floor, that those would all have what's known as an artist preference. So they're designed, leased, marketed, operated to support working artists. We also in the lounge would have, as you can see on that 5th floor, we have experience creating communal space for artists to come together and work together. We also include something that we've used successfully elsewhere, a prefabricated music room where, if you're a musician living in the building, one of the great amenities you have is you can practice with up to a 5-piece band. You can practice by yourself, or if you have a band. It's actually a really nice feature for artists. And actually, if you go to Old Town itself, you kind of go to the basement of Old Town, there's a lot of sort of practice rooms. Well, if you are an artist living here, you would have your own practice space. So we thought that's a really good amenity. We do also have, to address some misinformation that's been out there, 10 of the apartments would have PRA funding. It's an operating subsidy that is provided by the CHA. And essentially what that means is folks who live in those 10 apartments, they would be the lower income tiers. They only have to, only 30% of their rent would go to, only 30% of their income would go to paying rent. And the rest of it would be made up of that operating subsidy. That's what it is. And so, 10 of the apartments would have that. This is just another view that similar to some of the ones that we've seen before, but in this view, you can kind of see the the resident terrace that we have on the 4th floor overlooking Leland. And you can also, if you kind of follow that terrace, you can see where we have that row of windows on the 5th floor. That's actually the lounge that I was just talking about. That would be, the lounge would be for all residents in the apartment, but it's big enough where we could have some spaces carved out to particularly support artist collaboration for those artist apartments on the top floor. I'm going to talk relatively quickly through the process with the city. So the development would require low-income housing tax credits from the city. Tax credit proceeds would be used to help finance the development. It's used across the country. It's a widely understood process. It is cumbersome, not gonna lie, but it's a pretty well-known process for developing these types of apartments. And those tax credits do guide the rent and income descriptions that I was just going over. The city is a little unique in that it has a 2-step process for awarding tax credits. You submit a competitive stage 1 multifamily application, and those stage 1 submissions to the cities are development concepts. The city reviews those applications, and then it invites a select few to proceed to stage 2. And the reason, the city will tell you itself, it gets lots of good applications, but the resources are scarce. So they invite some of the applicants to move to stage 2. And in order to secure the tax credits, you still have to go through securing zoning approval, finalizing any agreements with the city, and getting a building permit. So stage 1 really is you submit a development concept, and then you get invited to stage 2. And that's where you have to go through a lot of additional work, including working with communities on zoning approvals and different agreements, and also getting your building permit. Previously, Department of Housing, it would only, it wasn't really known when they would be accepting applications. Sometimes it was every 5 years, sometimes it might be for 4 years, et cetera. Now that's no longer the case, which is great. With the recent administration and leadership at the city, they've committed to doing this every 2 years, which provides some predictability. It's expected, and the city's already stated, the Department of Housing, that they are planning to accept applications, stage 1 applications this summer. This is the timeline that, to date. Again, there's been quite a bit of misinformation out there. And so here are sort of the facts of the timeline. Back a couple of years ago, summer of 2019, I started to explore the potential of could this city-owned parking lot be redeveloped in the way we're proposing right now. I requested meetings with the Department of Housing. We met with Josh at the 47th Ward Alderman's office, as well as the 40th Ward Alderman. And we met with staff in the Chamber of Commerce. We began to develop initial concepts with the same goals that we are stated today. But I just want to put out there, it's really common. We work with the city of Chicago on a lot of developments, and it's really common for us to have different partnerships. And so it's not uncommon at all for us to sort of reach out if we have an initial concept to discuss its potential and kind of think through any issues. And we communicate with different departments at the city all the time. In fall of 2019, we began to meet with community stakeholders, neighborhood groups, and businesses to start reviewing our concept, to provide and getting more input and kind of refining the concept. We did submit a stage 1 application to the Department of Housing in the fall of 2019, and we did submit for PRA funding. In winter 2020, we continue to meet with community stakeholders to kind of continue to refine the design, because again, what you submit to the city, it's a development concept, and you always kind of continue to refine after your stage one and move into stage two if you're so lucky to get selected. We did receive approval for PRA funding in the winter of 2020. However, in the spring of 2020, we were not selected to move to stage two. But as is typical, you do a debriefing meeting with Department of Housing, and it was a positive one. You know, resources really are scarce. It's scarce. It's incredibly competitive trying to secure 9% credits. But you know, it's been well documented and communicated that the city really is supportive of this concept of equitable transit-oriented development that is trying to make it more affordable to live around transit. And they're also really committed to the idea of improving affordability and what they refer to as opportunity areas, areas well served by businesses and parks and different schools. So, you know, we weren't selected, but we still felt encouraged that we had a good concept and one that we should consider continuing to advance. So, you know, that's what we did in terms of just doing a lot of design refinement. We did a lot of, we've never spent more time on refining parking than we have on this concept at this stage of design. So, you know, we spent a number of months continuing to kind of tweak and improve. And it's led us to this point in time. This spring would continue to collect stakeholder review and input on the current concept. We plan to submit this summer for stage one, the stage one multifamily application. We expect that decisions would be made in the fall for the city to invite a number of applicants to move to stage two. Sorry for the typo there. And we would, if we are invited to move to stage two, then we would be coming back to community stakeholders for check-ins and would ultimately submit a proposal to the Zoning Advisory Committee for the 47th Ward. And so that would be basically what the next year would look like. Again, there's certainly no guarantee at all that we would get invited to stage two, but this is what the sort of major steps would be if we did submit and were selected. You know, we've gone through a lot of different community benefits. Again, this meeting is going to be recorded, so I'm not going to dive into details on all of these, but there are a number of community benefits that's intentional. We do feel like our proposal aligns well with the master plan from 2019, creates a better gateway while still preserving public parking, creates a better and safer pedestrian experience, and provides apartments that are affordable to a wide range of incomes that are being priced out of Lincoln Square. We've talked about the outdoor seating along Leland. We've talked about the importance of trying to provide a better gateway, particularly for folks who are crossing Western and walking to the square. We've talked about the improvements to the streetscape, which we think are significant and important and necessary. And then in terms of promoting small businesses, we're preserving public parking in the long run, which we do think is important. We think the apartments, we know that they would, that a lot of the folks who would likely move into these apartments are folks who work in the community, in local businesses. And as is called out in the 2019 master plan, this development, along with other developments happening along the corridors and close to the train stations, helps to increase density, helps to help address the loss of populations, which is important for businesses in the community. And then on arts and culture, you know, we've talked about that we would provide the top floor would be artist preference apartments. We have a lot of success in delivering those types of apartments and working with artists, and so are excited about the idea here. It would have some great amenity space in the building for those artists. And we're certainly open to and would want to pursue public art in and around the development.
Thanks, Will. All right, let's jump into a handful of questions before we move over to the public comment portion of the presentation. A lot of questions about the residential units, the financing. So first off, why was the original proposal declined? What has changed?
You know, we were, the debriefing, it was pretty straightforward. They said that, there were a lot of good applications. Some were for developments that had been sort of in the works for a number of years. And like I said, in the past, the city would maybe only accept applications maybe every 5 years or so. And so there was probably, you know, a backlog of developments that needed to happen around Chicago. And so we were told that we had a good submission and shouldn't be discouraged from the fact that there's just, you know, very scarce resources, certainly no guarantees at all moving forward, but that it was a good submission and there just wasn't enough resources to go around. I'm sure there were other good applications, great applications that also weren't invited to go to stage 2.
So Will, on a related note, there's a number of questions from folks asking for details on the financing in terms of all the, what we would call the capital stack. A lot of folks want to know more details about how the project is financed.
So yeah, it's a combination of public and private sources. So the biggest public resource would be the tax credits that we've talked about. It is really common for city-owned parcels, this has come up a little bit, to be donated for this type of development so that it can generate another kind of resource referred to as donation tax credits. And those donation tax credits help to finance all of the improvements that we're talking about. They're an important resource. There's not funding for acquisition it's really, that's actually one of the scarcest resources, unfortunately, is funding to acquire property in an opportunity area like this. That doesn't exist, which is frankly one of the main reasons why neighborhoods become unaffordable as they get more and more amenities and services. There's just no ability to try to ensure affordability in those communities. So another resource would be donation tax credits. And then the city has a number of different sources that it uses to help finance developments like this. And so the sort of, you submit an application, you certainly make a request for the tax credits, but it's sort of the city, if you move to stage 2, the city sort of works with you on what the final bundle of funding sources would be, some sort of combination of credits. Home funds is a really common resource. TIF is a common resource. And there's trust fund dollars, ARO funds. There's a lot of different funding sources that ultimately get used to help make these developments occur. But there's also a private mortgage that we take out, like any other development. But, you know, it's obviously sort of keep in mind that because we're keeping the rents at a sort of lower affordable level, that does diminish our ability to take out large large private loans. And that's really where the tax credits come in to help make up for that gap.
Thanks, Will. There are a handful of questions about the PRA units. So you mentioned there are 10 units in the building that would have rental assistance, we're calling PR. Folks are asking, is that Section 8? Is that the housing voucher program? Can you just give some clarity on that.
Yep. So it is a voucher program, and it works similar to Section 8. There's all sorts of sort of stigmatizations around that, but the idea is that for lower income folks, they only have to pay. The voucher allows for 30% of their income. And so the PRA program is a voucher program that the CHA runs. It's 10 of the 51 apartments we're talking about. And the fact is, vouchers are used throughout the city. There's vouchers being used throughout Lincoln Square and other communities on the north side. It's actually a lot more common than people realize, and it's unfortunate that sometimes it gets stigmatized so much as it does. But those are operating subsidies that are vouchers that would come from the CHA. Yes.
Okay, great. I'm going to do rapid fire, and then we're going to need to get ready to move on to the public comment period. But handful of questions about how long does the property need to stay affordable, or how long does it have to be affordable?
Good question. So upfront, the tax credits, it's a minimum of 15 years, but then but then there's also an additional agreement that really commits to affordability of at least 30 years, where the rents stay at those affordable levels for at least 30 years. And then the city, often in its agreements, when you move into stage 2, even in some of their agreements, have it moving beyond that. One thing that's probably also important to add is, the way a lot of market-driven real estate development works is there's a developer who builds the property and sort of gets it all leased up, and then within a number of years sells it to another investor. And that's how it often works. That's not how this would work. We are a long-term owner. We are committed to the communities we work in. We have a long track record of that. And so we would be a long-term owner here, and to help ensure affordability, to help ensure quality, and to help ensure a long-term positive community impact.
Great. All right. Last question. Are there any market rate units in the building?
It's a really good question. No, there is a wide range. Market rate means that there's no income or rent restriction. And so, just kind of going back to this really quickly, all of the apartments have some sort of, you can call it rent control if you'd like, some sort of rent restriction applied to them. But it is certainly mixed income. You're talking about folks making less than $20,000, making up to $75,000. That's quite a range. But all of them have some sort of restriction on them. And the rationale for that is pretty straightforward. There's a lot of market rate housing being developed along Western and Lawrence, et cetera, and in the neighborhoods. And actually, for the way the financing would have worked, we would have been subsidizing more market rate units. And that didn't make sense. There's not a need to revitalize this community by attracting more market rate housing to it. There's a need to help make this neighborhood more affordable. It's losing affordability. And so there are, all of the apartments have some type of restriction to them. But again, as you can see, it's a pretty wide range of incomes.
Great. All right, thanks, Will. We are on the hour at 8 o'clock. We've got 30 minutes left. Do want to thank everyone attending for all of the questions. We don't have a way of necessarily tracking, but we've literally received over a couple hundred questions. So apologize, we weren't able to get to a lot of the questions today. We are going to do our best to follow up and issue a statement. We're going to consolidate the questions, put them into major categories, and so we'll respond as best we can to the questions that were raised today. So thank you everyone for submitting your questions. At this point, we're going to move on to the comment period, the feedback period of the presentation. Will, if you don't mind moving forward to the slide near the end, we've got just an outline of the next steps in the process. There we go. So Aaron, who is our, what I like to call our DJ behind the system or behind the curtain, he's running the technology for today. He is going to, at this point, turn on the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen in the Zoom webinar window. If you would like to provide feedback, please raise your hand and it'll show up on our screen. And then we're asking folks that when you're called on, Aaron will unmute your mic and you are permitted to speak. Because of the time, we only have 30 minutes. We want to try to get through as many public comments as possible. We're not going to be in a position to have a dialogue or respond to questions, but we will, this is being recorded, as Will mentioned. So we will take this into consideration with all of the questions we got so we can respond in general to, or respond to the entire community. Last folks take 2 minutes maximum. As the moderator, I'll give folks a reminder when they're approaching their time. And then we just ask for everyone's grace and patience to finish, if you can, right on the 2-minute mark so we can move on to the next speaker. We want to, again, try to give as much time to everybody that wants to speak today as possible. So with that said, I'm going to look at my screen here. And Aaron, if you could turn on the first person, which or the in line here, and bear with us as we kind of work this out. But I'm not sure if there's a way for that person to know that they're called on, but otherwise I can say their name. The first person is Teresa Forcher, if I pronounce your name correctly.
All right, I hope you can hear me. I'm Teresa Fouché. Thank you very much for the very thorough and detailed presentation. I own a 2-flat, less than a block away from the site. I have lived here for 15 years. The parking lot is never full, and there is always metered spots on Western Open. But this isn't about parking. And I'm sorry, you've clearly spent a lot of time designing the parking garage, and the cost of constructing a parking garage is a big burden for a nonprofit affordable housing developer. But this is about housing. According to the US Census, 50% of Lincoln Square residents make less than $80,000. 70% of the households are 1 or 2 member households. 20% of the residents don't own a car, and another 50% of residents only own 1 car. And most importantly, over the last 20 years, Lincoln Square has lost 30,000 residents. Real estate market analysis studies have shown that shoppers that arrive on foot and bike actually spend more than those that arrive by car. And you can support local businesses by increasing the number of people who live as close as possible. The adage is retail follows rooftops, and that is so true. Again, I live and own property less than a block from here. I am in full support of the project. However, I would like to see more dwelling units and less parking. Other than that, I look forward to welcoming you to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Teresa. Aaron, you want to go ahead and select the next person, which is Fred Wellish. Fred, if you're on, unmute your mic and go ahead and speak. Fred, are you with us? All right.
Raised my hand by accident.
Nope, there you go. Oh, you raise your, okay, thanks, Fred. Aaron, do you want to mind moving on to the next person? John Morrison.
Hello, my name is John Morrison. I've owned property less than a mile from there, I guess 1511 West Montrose and Ashland for 7 years. I am a regular fixture in the square. I cycle around the neighborhood, I drive, I walk, I use all forms of transit. I work in the neighborhood. I am disheartened by some of the pushback that this project has seen. I appreciate the care and attention to detail that has been put in by both the Alderman's office and community builders. I would like to echo Teresa's statement that I really think that I'd like to see more of a fixture, more of a focus on affordable units and parking garage, less parking garage. That said, I think the most important thing is that we get more residents in our neighborhood and that we increase the affordability of the neighborhood. My wife and I are looking to buy, we own a place currently and we're looking to buy a home, like a bigger home in the neighborhood. And it's hard, it's really expensive. It's really expensive to live here. And I know that the price that we're gonna sell our place for when we do within the next year is gonna be dramatically more than what we paid for it. And we haven't done much to our unit. The cost of living in this area has gone up a lot. I hope that people will take consideration to that so that we can keep our community vibrant. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, John. Aaron, go ahead and select the next person, Jonathan Brinjwat.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Bringawat. Compared to some, I'm a relatively new resident to the area. Bought a condo about half a mile from the square a year ago. And I'd echo what the previous commenters have said, but that the most important thing is that we, get the affordable housing built, even if it has more parking than I might prefer. The other thing I'd say is that while I'm a property owner, I don't think that that should matter in how my voice is considered here. Renters have just as much stake in affordability in our neighborhood and the city as a whole in these decisions. And
Jonathan, you're breaking up a bit for us. Go ahead and speak if you're still speaking. All right, looks like Jonathan is dropping. Oh, Jonathan, are you still with us?
yes, that's all I had to say.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jonathan. Aaron, go ahead and select the next person, Catherine Ronan.
Yes, I'm here. I've lived in Lincoln Square for about 20 years, and I agree we need a lot more affordable housing. My concern is that on weekends, the traffic increases, parking is tighter on the weekends than during the week. So my concern is that it's not a big stretch of Leland. It's not a big stretch, it's like a block long. It's not that big. So I'm concerned about losing the parking. I'm not a fan of the design. I think it just looks like a box looming over the street. And so I would like, maybe some more architectural details added. I appreciate all the time and energy that's gone into it. Yeah, that's probably all that I'm up with affordable housing. I'm just really worried about the traffic. I think this will increase it. And the design, I think, could be more architecturally appealing. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Catherine. Aaron, go ahead and select the next individual, Peter Morris. Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, am I on?
Yep.
Okay, I'm actually a renter in the neighborhood, have been fortunate enough to be able to afford staying here over 13 years now. I so far like everything. I have to say, just from a purely aesthetic standpoint, I like the simplicity. I like that it's sort of clean. I like that it doesn't do too much. But mostly I actually feel like I'm just echoing what the first three or so have said, that I feel like keeping the parking is a missed opportunity. I think we are going to have to understand that things are going to require mode shifts. Things are good. Moving forward, we are going to be required to do things that are maybe painful for some people. And people don't like to have to grapple with that right now. I would say often, as I believe Teresa, the first speaker, mentioned, the importance of parking to businesses is often totally understandably overestimated for small business owners. I know my wife works in a small business, and I understand the concerns that go into that. But I think it is far less vital than is necessarily believed. But affordable, a parking lot with affordable housing on top of it is better than a parking lot with nothing on top of it. So to that end, I would say that's you know, it's better than nothing. So I do appreciate that. I think that's all I have.
Great. Thanks, Peter. Aaron, if you could select the next person, Carl Bayan, if I pronounce your name correctly.
Thank you, Kirk. You are probably the first person to pronounce my last name correctly at first sight. My wife and I live here in the neighborhood. I've lived here my whole life. I went to Queen of Angels School, Queen of Angels Parish. When I moved back to the neighborhood after college as an adult, I did not make very much money, and I lived in an apartment with friends that cost a lot less than it does today. When I see a development like this, I think this is the type of thing that could have kept me living near my parents and in my community as a young adult who didn't have a lot of money. Today, my wife and I, we were able to buy a 2-flat, and we live here without a car. And I'd like to echo the same statements that I've heard from others, that the inclusion of so much parking here seems like a missed opportunity. I would love to see the amount of parking here reduced. But as others said, this is it's a beautiful development of so much affordable parking at so much affordable housing at such low percentages of AMI is so thoughtful. And we live west of Western, and the idea that we could walk east on Leland into that plaza is so much more inviting than walking east and appearing in front of that parking lot. Only one piece of feedback I have, which is a little more critical, is about the alley. The alley feels like a scar on the pedestrian experience walking deeper into the square. And if there was anything to make that more beautiful for pedestrians, I'd love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carl. Mark Dawson is next. Mark, are you there? If you're there, Mark, unmute.
I'm here, I believe.
Great.
Thank you. I can speak briefly. I live a block from the proposed development. I very enthusiastically support the idea, and I am delighted both with the plan for affordable housing and for local retail and for pedestrian access. In my view, anything is better than a slab of asphalt, and the way that corner was redeveloped back in the middle 70s was a mistake, and we can now partially correct that by putting a beautiful building on that site for people to live in and for retail. I've lived in the neighborhood for 33 years. I have not owned a car for 35 years. My wife and I rely on walking and biking and taking the L everywhere. So this is an effort that I enthusiastically support.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Next is Maria Papas. Hi, Maria. If you're there, unmute.
Yeah, unmute. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm the Cook County Treasurer. I'm involved in this evening because I'm intimately involved in the German community, both a member of the Niedersachsen Club and involved in the Mayfest and the Oktoberfest. So I have never gotten as many calls as I have gotten over this project. So I think that the best way for me to handle this is just to say out loud my questions, or which the questions that the residents are posing to me. And then I've submitted to you my email. So I'm hoping that you will submit these answers to me so that my chief of staff can in turn submit them to members of the community who are calling and questioning me with regard to this. So the first question is, has the developer and or affiliates made contributions to anyone in city government? Number two, what projects have you completed in the city and how did you bid on them? And what was the RFP process? Number three, has anyone other than community builders bid on this project? Number four, are you requesting TIF funds? And if so, how much? Next question is, how much subsection 8 housing will be part of this development? I think you've answered that, but what is your minority participation for each aspect of the project? When was the first time you approached the alderman about this project? Who was present at that time? And how many meetings have you had with the aldermanic office and with his chief of staff, Josh Marks, and or others? Are you willing to share under Freedom of Information Act all emails regarding this project with anyone in the city and or the aldermanic office? Please advise the home address for each of the principals on this project, as well as the subs. Is there any subsection 8 housing within 2 miles of where each of these primary residences are for those who are attending this project? Beyond the 40 public parking spaces, how many other spaces are there for residents of this building? How much money is in the ward for SSA and or TIF funds? And have you met with the German organizations and or its members? Last questions, have you met with any of these German organizations? What, if any, concerns have you heard voiced other than what you skipped over in your presentation? And how do you intend to address them? Is there a competitive bid on this project? Please forward the answers to these questions to my email, which I have provided. I thank you for listening to these questions, and I hope that you will help me get the answers out to various constituents who have contacted me because they feel they're not getting answers out of the alderman's office. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot, Maria. Next, Jenna Olson.
Hi, so I just wanted to say I don't live in Lincoln Square, I live in North Center, but I go to Lincoln Square weekly. I've lived here in this area for 20 years. I rent. I love this project. Like I said, we go to Lincoln Square all the time. We walk or bike. We don't drive there. So, I mean, we don't need to. We like using public transit or biking or walking there. It's, I look forward to the development of that corner not being such a blight that it is now. I love and welcome the affordable housing to the community, and I don't really care if there's less parking. So less parking, good. The Leland Greenway, good. Anyway, that's all I just wanted to say. I've seen so many signs saying, save our parking. I'm like, I wanted to make sure that I attended this meeting to say, hey, we don't all care about the parking that much. And it looks like you've already addressed the fact that there's going to be these 40 spots for the public and 9 for the residents. So it sounds like we're not really losing any parking. Anyway, that's it. That's all I have to say.
Great. Thank you, Jenna. Next is Colin Parasol.
Hi, just want to say I love the idea of widening the sidewalk. I'm glad that the parking garage won't be, at street level and creating what we tend to see sometimes with parking garages integrated with buildings, which is, the dead space there right next to where people are walking. So I'm glad to see that. Just wondering why the parking is being placed on the 2nd floor as opposed to the basement. Just thinking like you could have additional housing units on the 2nd floor instead of the parking while still having the same height of the building.
Great. Thanks, Colin. Next is Nicholas Katsapatos. Nicholas, are you there? Tell you what, Aaron, let's just keep Nicholas on deck, and then let's go to Paul Copeland, and we'll come back to Nicholas.
Hi, good evening. My name is Paul Copeland. I've been a resident of the 47th Ward for about 5 years now, and I've lived in Lincoln Square for about 3. I love this development. You know, when I left college a few years ago, I was looking for a place to live around here, and I was priced out of majority of the neighborhood. And most of my friends were priced out as well, even though they like to live here. So just echoing the comments said before, I would like to see more, less parking and more housing in this neighborhood. So, eliminating some of those spots would be fantastic, but also keeping things affordable is really important, and making sure that, this community doesn't stay stale. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Paul. Aaron, let's go to Casey Toner next. Casey?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm a resident. I live off of Irving and Ashland, but I'm in the square all the time. I support the housing there. People, not parking lots. That's my general theory. I think that events that are held there now, like Mayfest and the Farmers Market, I think could be moved to different places. Like public parks, or festivals that happen in the street, like Squared Roots Festival that I was thinking about. But yeah, just more housing for more people. I'm in support. That's it.
Great. Thanks, Casey. Aaron, let's go to Martin Menninger. Martin, are you there?
There we go. I think I've fixed it. Thanks.
Yep.
I've been a renter and an owner in this neighborhood for a couple years. I live a block away from the development now. I really appreciate everything your team has done, put into the site. As a planner myself, I appreciate that you're using the most recent master plan for the community and really taking that to heart, what it said. I'm a little embarrassed by some of the pushback you've received from small parts of the community, but I personally, like some of the other top speakers, think parking is really inappropriate for this site. I love the idea of putting it to better use. I'd love it to be either taller or denser in some way, even if that means less parking. And then finally, I just want you guys to know that there is a lot of parcels in our community that could use a development like this. Many of them are municipally owned. So once you finish with this, I hope you'll stick around and do some more work for us. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Martin. Next, Lisa Graham. Are you with us, Lisa?
Yeah.
Great, go ahead.
I'm hearing what everybody says, and I agree that we need affordable housing in Lincoln Square. Because it's nasty rents, and I am a renter. What I am concerned about is putting more density on that particular corner of Lincoln Square. I'm looking at entrance to the parking garage off of Northwestern across 2 lanes of traffic. I'm looking at a beautiful plaza on Leland, which would seem to me to narrow the street. And what my concern is basically density on a very heavily trafficked corner, because anyone who's been there at 8 o'clock on a normal weekday morning before COVID will tell you it's pretty nasty.
Are you still there, Lisa?
Yes, I am.
Great. Any other comments?
No, I mean, this is really my biggest concern. It's a very dense corner, a very heavily trafficked corner, and we're going to put more density in, and I'm hearing, you know, a 40+ unit thing with 9 parking spaces. Are you assuming that none of your tenants are going to have cars?
Right now, Lisa, we're just taking comments. So if you have any other comments, feel free.
Well,
But
I guess for me, this is the big question.
Understood. All right. Lisa, we're just about at 2 minutes for your time, but thank you very much.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Lisa. Eli Sheeran.
Hi, I've lived in the neighborhood for 15 years, and I just want to echo the comments from many of my neighbors tonight. I'm really excited about this development, and I want to thank you all for the time you spent tonight, but also the care and attention that you put into the various aspects of this plan. So thank you for that. I'm proud and excited to not only live in a vibrant community here in Lincoln Square, but also a progressive one where you go for a walk and you see yard signs that say everyone is welcome here. And I think this project is a good way to put those values into practice to make our neighborhood even more vibrant by having more people here and welcoming more diversity, as well as the environmental benefits. And like others have noted, it would be even better to have fewer parking spots, but thank you for taking into account the concerns that others may have voiced about losing the parking. So great job with the project.
Okay, thank you, Eli. All right, Aaron, let's go back to Nicholas Katsafatos. Nicholas, if you're still here, we'll unmute your microphone and go ahead and speak.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Awesome. Hey, I just wanted to compliment the time, care, and attention you put into this presentation as not-for-profit developers. I also wanted to compliment Matt Martin in trying to incorporate the various voices I'm sure he probably had to incorporate to put this project together. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because I live in Logan Square, not far from the Emmett Street development. And I have to be honest with you guys, for affordable housing, this is amazing. You're using brick that's in line with the community. You're trying to maintain the parking for the business district. I mean, the comparison is out of this world. I encourage anybody who's got issues with this development to come down here and see what I think is probably a barren concrete structure that doesn't match the character of the neighborhood at all, and that didn't retain parking, and it's into quite a cluster here. So, I do believe that you need clean community zoning to capture the true voice of a community, because anytime the zoning mandate comes from one person, you need that. But I want to compliment you guys, because this is I wish we had this here. I wish we had this in Logan Square. I really do. This is amazing. And I just wanted to let you guys know that.
Great. Thanks, Nicholas. And unfortunately, we've got a lot of other folks that raised their hand, but we are coming up on the 8:30 hour. And we do want to be respectful of everyone's time this evening. We don't want to force folks to hang up and still carry on and have them miss out on anything. But if you did have your hand raised and you weren't able to speak, we encourage you to follow up with us. There should have been an email as a part of your link that was sent out. Please reach out to us. And again, like I stated earlier, we will be consolidating and responding to the questions that were raised tonight. We thank you for your time tonight. Thank you, Will Woodley. Thank you, Gabriel Chikevich, and Ash, Ray, and Aaron, our guy behind the curtain, and Laura too, who gave her comments at the beginning. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We'll look forward to communicating with you soon, and hopefully be able to share with you the progress along the way. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for participating.